And so I'll never forget it. We almost didn't get the deal done, and he's sitting in my office, which is now, I guess, technically his office because he owned the building and everything then. And he said to me, "Congratulations, we got the deal done. I didn't think we were going to get it done, but congratulations, you're now a millionaire. And let me give you a little piece of advice," which I didn't want to tell him I was already a millionaire at that point, but whatever. This guy's worth $100 million plus. I'm going to listen to what he says. He said to me, "It's a lot easier to make $1 million than it is to hold on to $1 million." And that just scared me. Like, it really resonated with me. And I was sitting there like, this was after the wire transfers had gone through and everything. And sure enough, he was right. He said a lot of people are going to be pitching you investment ideas and investment schemes. And I drive a 2006 Chevy Tahoe. So I drive that's an 18-year-old car. So I still drive old stuff. My home's paid for. I have no debt. And now here's the thing. I'm sure if I did some smarter stuff and leveraged some things, my net worth would be 2 or 3x what it is today, especially over the last 10 years. But man, I've never lost a night's sleep. And so there's something to be said for that, especially, with the roller coaster that we're kind of going through now. And who knows what the next couple of years is going to bring us.
Welcome, millionaires and future millionaires. You're listening to the Millionaires Unveiled podcast, a show where you'll hear the stories and interviews of everyday millionaires. We'll unveil their decisions, their strategies, and their portfolio allocation. Now to your host, Jace Mattinson.
Welcome back to another episode of the Millionaires Unveiled podcast. This is episode number 316. Stace, we're changing it up this week. Kristen wrote in, and she doesn't want to know what's going on in your world anymore. So, how are you doing?
Doing great over here. Should we tell them the big news or move on with the podcast?
Big news will be dropping on Thursday.
All right. Stay tuned.
But we got a couple great reviews / inquiries this week and questions from listeners. So, let's get to that first. This one comes from listener Seattle, who's actually living in Canada, interestingly enough, and I just got back from there. It says, "Love the show. I'd like to suggest having more people who have a net worth in the 4+ million rate category. Seems like a big chunk is $1 million or under," which actually we don't have that many that are under $1 million anymore, but we are going to start picking some of those back up on Thursdays. While impressive, not that uncommon anymore. However, I will note that the Canadian dollar and the US dollar are drastically different. Or I will note that the Canadian dollar and the US dollar are not as close to 1-to-1 as they once were. Just for our listeners in Canada, I was with a Canadian this last week, and we made a few jokes about it because for the longest time it was 1-1, but recently it hasn't been. So, hey man, I'm with you, listener Seattle. I would love to have more guests that have higher net worths, but once again, this is all voluntary. So take those that write in, and would love to have more of them. So, and we also get some requests from time to time in the 55 plus age range, those that have a little bit more experience in life and can tell all of us, been there, done that, got the t-shirt kind of thing. So always looking for great guests. If you'd like to be on the show, send us an email, millionairesunveiled@gmail.com.
This message comes from Eric. He says, "Hello, for your guests, are they basing their home assets value off of their latest appraisals or online app evaluations like Zillow? We all know how nuts the last few years have made these numbers, so I was just curious. I know mine would make a huge difference for my net worth. Thanks for your time and putting out easily my favorite finance show. Cheers." Jace, what do you say?
Yeah, great question. And to be frank, I don't know that we have actually ever polled our millionaires on this. What I can tell you from context and from several of those that I can kind of recall, I do think a majority of them use either the basis that they bought the home, if it's been within the last few years, if it's something that they bought, 10 plus, 5 plus, 15 plus years ago. I do think they probably use either Zillow or some online tool. If they do have a updated market appraisal, which, by the way, your realtor should be willing to do for you. In any case, typically they're going to pull a couple comps from your area and give you a market analysis or current market analysis on your home. If it's something that you want to do, I wouldn't bug them frequently about that. But, given the environment that we've seen the last couple of years here, it may not be a bad idea to, if you are trying to mark on your net worth, to probably get that, annually, if not every couple of years while the market's kind of going crazy. But you can also just look at, your recent comps in your area and look at sales per square foot or the dollars per square foot sold to try to do what you can to get pretty close. So outside of that, I don't know that our millionaires have really dialed in, utilizing a specific formula or anything specific on that. It's pretty hard. I mean, just in general, all assets, even if it's a business or if it's, you can kind of get there, but sometimes it, can fluctuate. And same thing on real estate and really pretty much anything except for you're selling in the public markets. So, yeah.
In our own life, I know you track our net worth. When I say you, I mean we. Okay, it's you. I look at it sometimes. But how do you track ours?
Yeah, I take that approach where I might look at it and make adjustments annually or every other year based on kind of the market environment. And in most cases, I think I've held it pretty steady unless it had gone up by more than like 15%. And by steady, meaning that, I'd put in a 5%, 3% increase year over year type thing, except for the most recent kind of run up 2 years ago. I think it was a 15%, and I ended up getting a current market analysis on a couple of our properties. Thanks, Eric, for sending that in. Once again, if you'd like to send a question in, we do have a speak pipe where you can actually voice the question in. We'll play it on the air. For those that have a question, we'll start to incorporate it into asking some of our millionaires when we do interviews as well. Stace, I got to tell you, our guests, especially the guest lineup that we have coming up, is amazing. And all 300 plus of them that have been on the show already are absolutely fabulous. And I'm so grateful that we have people willing to do this and continue to do this. I think, we're coming up on year 7 of the podcast, which is pretty wild. But I got to tell you, and I apologize, there's so many out there that send requests in. You don't like this, you don't like that, you want more of this, you want more of that. And I really wish I could accommodate every single request that we get in terms of trying to, change up the show or do this, that, and the other thing. And maybe one day we will hit on a few of those things that come in. Just know that your requests are heard. While one request I get, or in some cases we get one request, and in other case it's like the exact opposite. Between millions of people now listening to this, there's always going to be a few things that you may or may not like or may or may not think are perfect. But at any rate, appreciate you listening. And just know that we do read all the comments, questions, etc. that comes in to the show. And as time goes on, maybe we'll incorporate some of those things that come in.
And I will say, anything that makes sense to adjust, we certainly do right away, and we do hear your comments. So thanks for your feedback. We always try to do better.
I gotta say, there's something to be said about being consistently consistent. There's a gentleman who is in this space who's been consistently consistent now for 3 decades, and he turned himself into a billionaire over it, which is pretty crazy to think. But nonetheless, that is something that we're definitely going for. I'm a big fan of being consistently consistent. And yeah.
Yeah, the main thing is to keep the main thing, right?
Yep. So on today's episode, we have Bryan. He's actually a returning guest, given that the listenership has increased drastically. Most of you probably haven't heard of his episode. But his original episode was actually in July of 2021. It was 193. And yeah, we get into a totally different conversation on this one. And so I thought it'd be a great update with him. Going back to a couple of the comments earlier, Bryan's net worth is 5+. He does have significant equity in his business that could be valued, upwards of 8 to 9 figures. However, he's just not sure where it is, and so he doesn't include it in his net worth. And so, there's not a Zillow out there for business valuations. Really, it's a much more complex process. So, to the one that wanted somebody worth more than $4 million, well, today you got Bryan, and to Eric, who asked the question specifically related to how to value real estate, here's a guy that really isn't quite sure how to value business. We know it's more than $1 million bucks, but yeah, he's got everything paid for, and we talk about all sorts of interesting stuff. In fact, when he was 29, he was living in a 7,000 square foot house and was driving a Ferrari, everything paid for. So you can imagine and we get into a little bit of the detail with him describing what it was like as an early young millionaire. But yeah, he cuts grass, and that's where he sold his first business in that realm. And now he's building a tech startup that is in the same field, in the same industry. So going to be a great conversation with him. Super excited to have him back on the show today. He has quite a bit of single-family rentals, and we get into the detail of how he acquired those and what his mindset was as he was starting to get into the rental real estate game, and how he decided whether to invest in real estate or back in his own business in terms of return and whatnot. So, and without any further delay, let's get into the episode with Bryan.
Bryan, do you want to just give us a little about your background and what you're up to now?
Yeah, sure. So thanks for having me on, Jace. My name is Bryan Clayton. I am CEO of GreenPal. GreenPal is the mobile app that works like Uber, but for lawn care services. So if you're a homeowner and you've got tall grass outside and you need to get somebody to mow it, rather than calling around on Craigslist or Facebook or trying to flag somebody down, you just download GreenPal, pop your address in, and get quotes in 2 minutes and hire somebody, and they come out and do it for you, and you pay them right through the app. GreenPal is a 11-year overnight success. My co-founders and I have been at this for over a decade now, and started off just in Nashville, Tennessee, and have now grown the platform to every major city in the United States. Around 300,000 people using the app to get grass cutting services, and now doing over $30 million a year in revenue. And we have self-funded the business, haven't taken on any outside capital, and have just been plugging away, ground and pound for a decade.
Good for you. And we had you back on the show a few years ago. I guess it's been almost 3 years-ish. And no joke, right after you came on, I used the app, and sure enough, got somebody to cut my lawn out at my cabin out on the lake. So it was great. So I was a user. I sold that place since, but yeah, it's a great little tool. So give our listeners kind of a little history before you got to GreenPal. What did it look like, post high school for you?
Yeah. So, in high school, post high school, I was mowing grass. My dad got tired of, one day in 1995, my dad got tired of watching me play Nintendo and playing Super Mario Kart. And he came into my room and he said, "Get off your ass. I got a gig for you. You're going to go mow the neighbor's yard." And he made me go cut the neighbor's grass. I was not living in a Democratic household. And luckily he did that, because I remember I got paid $20 for like less than an hour's work. And I was hooked from that moment on. And I thought, this is awesome. This is where it's at. And so I took to it like a hobby, or almost like a sport or something, and started passing out flyers. And by the time I graduated high school, I had like 2 helpers and 200 customers, and went to college, and went to college nights and weekends, and mowed yards 6-7 days a week through college. And then after I graduated business school, I had to make a decision. Was I going to be a lawn guy for the rest of my life? I didn't really want to be a lawn guy, but I thought maybe I could make something out of this business, and maybe that business ownership is kind of my lane. And I had a chip on my shoulder. I wanted to prove that I could build a big business in the industry. And so I made a business plan with what little I learned in business school, and set out to build a large landscaping company. And luckily, I had a couple things that broke my way that were going for me. Nashville, Tennessee was just booming back then, still booming now, but it was just entering its boom. So there's all kinds of new construction, new neighborhoods, new shopping centers, new opportunity to build a service-based business like that. And so I just rolled up my sleeves and started working the plan, and yada, yada, yada. 15 years later, my team and I were able to build it into a $10 million a year business, 150 employees, 90 crews going out every day. And the business was acquired in 2013 by a company out of Austin, a national company that operates in 20 or 30 different cities. And they wanted a presence in Nashville, so they bought my business. And after that, I took some time off, kind of retired, I guess you could say. I wasn't like super wealthy, but I had enough from the proceeds of that sale to not have to work anymore. and figured out what I wanted to do with my life. And I thought, well, I'd like to try to start a tech startup. And so I had the idea for GreenPal and started working on that project.
This show is supported by Delete Me. In today's digital age, our personal information is more vulnerable than ever, often scattered across countless websites and databases. Delete Me has been my solution for taking control of my online presence and ensuring my personal information remains private. Have you ever heard of data brokers? They collect information and make it available to any stranger on the web, which can lead to identity theft. If you've ever been the victim of identity theft, you know it can be a nightmare. It can ruin your chance at the new job you want, lead to legal issues, or worse. Delete Me removes your information from hundreds of data brokers. The best part? The service doesn't stop at a one-time removal. Delete Me provides ongoing monitoring to ensure that your data doesn't reappear. If it does, they take immediate action to remove it again. So what are you waiting for? Don't let your online past define your future. Take control with Delete Me. Now get 20% off your Delete Me plan when you go to joindeleteme.com/MU20 and use promo code MU20. The only way to get 20% off is to go to join, that's JOIN, deleteme.com/MU20 and enter promo code MU20 at checkout. That's joindeleteme.com/MU20, promo code MU20. And thanks again to Delete Me for supporting today's episode.
So now that you've got this business and you've been at it for a long time, where does your net worth stand today?
I'm a little over $5 million. And that's outside of GreenPal. GreenPal, we've had several acquisition offers in the multiple 8 figures, but that we've turned down. But not including my equity in GreenPal. GreenPal is self-funded and is owned wholly by me and my 2 co-founders. And so whatever that's worth, I don't count. So I just count, okay, what's my real estate worth? What's my investments worth? And that's steadily grown over the last few years because it's all real estate. It's all single family homes. And when I sold that first business, I'll never forget it. The guy that bought the company was this arrogant dude, and I didn't really like him, but he was worth like 9 figures, and he was super successful in the industry that I just spent my whole life building a business in. He took a company public in that space, which is really hard. And so I'll never forget it. We almost didn't get the deal done, and he's sitting in my office, which is now, I guess, technically his office because he owned the building and everything then. And he said to me, "Congratulations, we got the deal done. I didn't think we were going to get it done, but congratulations, you're now a millionaire. And let me give you a little piece of advice," which I didn't want to tell him I was already a millionaire at that point, but whatever. This guy's worth $100 million plus. I'm going to listen to what he says. He said to me, "It's a lot easier to make $1 million than it is to hold on to $1 million." And that just scared me. It really resonated with me. And I was sitting there this was after the wire transfers had gone through and everything. And sure enough, he was right. He said a lot of people are going to be pitching you investment ideas and investment schemes and different ways to invest this money. And I'm just telling you, it's a lot harder to hold on to it than it was for you to make it. And sure enough, right after that conversation, my banker calls me. Well, not really my banker, somebody at the bank that I bank with that I never spoken with calls me and says, "Hey, I just saw this wire come through your account. Do you want to sit down with our wealth management team?" And I was just like, I don't know who this is. I don't know who this person is. And so sure enough, so the combination of this guy telling me that, and then literally an hour later, somebody calling me already pitching me on how to invest the money. I was like, this dude's probably right. I don't want to screw this up. And so the safest, most sure thing I could think of was just going up buying up single family homes. And so I just went on a buying spree, buying every decently priced $75,000 to $200,000 single family home I could buy. And I bought a lot of HUD foreclosures and got some really good deals on some stuff. And so as it turns out, spring of 2013 was still a really good time to buy real estate. And so I put it all in single family homes. And so then I was kind of poor again because I didn't have any cash. But it was good because now I couldn't screw that up, and I had a good residual cash flow coming in every month to where I could live a really comfortable lifestyle and not worry about screwing it up. And I'm glad I got that advice because I did peel off like $100,000 just to play with some investing, some see if I could pick some stocks and 10 years now that's worth about $5,000. So it was actually good advice. And I'm glad he gave it to me. And I'm glad I followed it because now I bought several homes for $60,000 and $75,000 that are worth over $300,000 today. So not only did it like protect the principal and cash flow the whole time, it also appreciated nicely. So that's what I did with it, and it worked out. Got lucky.
So going back to the strategy of acquiring these single family homes, did you have any before you sold the company at all?
Yeah. So going back, rewinding 10, 12 years before then, I was probably 19, 20 years old, and I was making in 1999, 2000, I was making like $200,000 a year mowing yards, and not gross. Like I was meeting with my tax accountant, wondering how we were going to pay this huge tax bill because I was making so much cash mowing yards. And she told me, do you like cutting grass? I said, no, I hate it. It sucks. My back hurts every day. Because back then I was physically mowing the yards. I smell like grass. My girlfriend hates me because I smell like gasoline every day, and I get home after dark, and I don't have any life outside of this business. It sucks. I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. She said, well, you need to be thinking about what age 35 and 40 looks like, and you need to start taking this money and investing it. And let me just tell you about another client I have that owns 40 rental properties. I was like, he owns 40 rental properties? I couldn't believe it. And she said, yeah. She started telling me about this guy, just told me a story about this guy. I thought, I want to be that guy. And so I decided, well, I'm just going to do that. And I'm going to take as much money as I can, cash that I was making mowing yards, and try to buy up fixer-upper homes. And I would, I set a goal to buy one a year. And I was pretty much able to buy one a year, with the exception of the 2008 meltdown. My business almost got killed by that. So it was everything I do to hold on. But pretty much every year I bought one fixer-upper. And my strategy was, because I was in a seasonal business, and so I would, at the end of the year, I would go hunting for one of these in October, and just a real dump of a property, and then put my guys on fixing it up over the winter to keep them busy, and then have a tenant in it by January or February, and then season would start again, and then I would have another property on my monopoly board. So when my business was sold, I already had 9 or 10 of these, and so I knew that business. I knew that it wasn't terribly complicated, and I kind of knew I tried back then. I was buying stuff with the 1% rule all day long. You can't do that anymore, but back then I was, where 1% of the home's value is a monthly rent. So if it was a $100,000 home, it should be able to get $1,000 a month. That little rule of thumb is long since gone out the window in Middle Tennessee. But back then, that was just a simple rule of thumb I used to acquire properties. And when I plowed all my cash from the sale into properties, that was the same kind of heuristic that I used, and it worked. And I knew that although 2008, 9 properties did go down in value, a lot of those were your more like McMansions. My little humble properties that I bought for 70 or 80 or 90K didn't go down that much. So I knew it was durable in that sense, and then also I knew I wanted to do it debt free because I didn't take on any debt building that portfolio up. I paid cash for all of it. Another interesting side note, while I'm just telling anecdotes, from 1999 to 2003, I was mowing yards. And so every day I would listen to talk radio, and sandwiched between 2 talk radio hosts I like, there was G. Gordon Liddy in the morning, and there was another conservative talk radio host in the evening. And sandwiched between those two was Dave Ramsey. And I hated Dave Ramsey. But like I had to listen to 4 hours of this guy every day because back then you didn't have Spotify, you didn't have MP3 players, you had FM, AM, FM radio, and so I would just listen to 3 or 4 hours of Dave Ramsey and listening to like his philosophies on wealth building and dealing with debt and things like that. Scared me again to not take on a bunch of debt. So I built my business debt free and also my real estate portfolio debt free. And so building the business debt free was one thing that enabled me to get it sold because I didn't have any debt when I sold it.
So that's actually a really good segue into the question I'd like to dig into. So in that acquisition phase, basically it sounded like from your story that you had built up a business that was big enough to get noticed by someone, a bigger fish, right? So how did you find the lawnmower king of, where, a different region that's worth 9 figures, and he's looking to acquire smaller lawnmower lawn maintenance owners? Like how did that come about?
Yeah, ideally, you are so good that people come knocking on your door and it's just a smooth acquisition, but that's not how it was for me. It was very much a sale. It was very much a push. It was very much a outbound process. And so I had reached the point of where I had plateaued running the business from a personal development level. Like one thing, I think if you're doing business right at any scale, you as the founder should evolve into a whole new person every 2 or 3 years, where you're learning new things, learning new systems, learning new processes, you're conquering new challenges, you're achieving goals, and you're growing and evolving. And that's one of the fun, you may not realize it, and I did it at the time, but that's one of the fun things about it that kind of keeps you plowing through the lows and keeps you going. And I had reached a plateau as far as that experience of it, probably year 13, where I realized, man, it's not like I conquered the world or anything, but my business was one of the bigger ones in Tennessee. I kind of reached a point of market saturation, and now to go to the next level, I was going to have to open up new branches in different parts of the Southeast. I didn't really have the appetite to do that. So I guess you could say I was kind of spent running that business for 15 years. Or 13 at that time. And so I made the decision, okay, I'm going to try to get this business acquired, because I heard other people had been able to do it. And I talked to people at conferences, and I met a guy at a conference once that specialized in what it's called green industry. My industry is the landscape industry is called the green industry. And it was just green industry mergers and M&A. And that's all this guy did. And he literally did not sell businesses outside of the industry. And every year he would do 1 or 2 deals, and he would take, I think it was 5% of the proceeds. That may be high. It might have been less. May have been 3%. Anyway, he took a look at everything and gave me the hard truth that I was going to have to rebuild the business from the studs out. I was going to take the business down to the studs and rebuild it to get it acquired. There was just a lot of systems that I didn't have. The accounting was not in GAAP, which it needed to be, and that took a lot of time. A lot of the key people you need. And also how you run the business is very different. You might run a business as a family business, and versus how you run a business you eventually want to sell are vastly different. And an example of that might be just for example, let's say at the shop, we had a philosophy at the shop that it should look like a Ferrari dealership. It should be clean, the floor should be shiny, the fence should be painted. It should all the tools should be lined up. It should just be gorgeous. And we spent quite a bit of money, we spent $5,000 repainting the fence. And as it turns out, that $5,000 we spent redoing the fence cost us 5 times 6, $30,000 at sale because that was an expense we incurred that we didn't necessarily have to. and so, if you're planning on keeping the business for 10 or 20 years, yeah, you do things like that. If you're planning on selling it in 2 years, you don't do things like that. And so there was all kinds of discretionary expenses that we did because it matched our philosophy and culture that weren't necessarily directly equated to EBITDA. And so just all sorts of weird things like that took my point is, took a long time to sort through and change and fix. So it was 2 years from the time I decided I wanted to sell the company to the day we got a term sheet. And then from the day we got a term sheet, it was another 9 months of hell through due diligence and back and forth and meeting with different people and then getting a deal signed, and then going through a big ordeal of retrading and arguing over price and stuff. So easily the hardest thing I've ever done.
This is Jace's realm for torturing small business owners into acquisition. So I'm sure he's getting ready to ask some great questions. But before he does, you kind of led. I was like, are there lawn care conferences, and it sounds like you went to some industry conferences, so you were put yourself in the mix. You're obviously a great talker and you can sell and things like that. And so you basically built an industry Rolodex, so to speak, right? And found your way to someone who specializes in this type of M&A, which is very similar to our prior guest we just had who, sought out, someone who does M&A and literally just Googled it and found the right people. And then they told her, here's what you need to do to get the exit you want, right? And so that's pretty amazing. And my next question though is, okay, so you're on to GreenPal and your business is scaling now, and you're getting looked at and you're getting offers. How is it that you're capable of saying no at this point? Is it because you already have wealth, or is it because the vision you have is bigger than the money at the moment? Like, how do you say no to big offers that are obviously life changing?
Yeah, good question. And part of managing your own personal psychology through all the journey of building a company like this I think is half the battle. And so before we were doing good, we were not doing good, and it sucked. And I had to make a decision in the early days of starting this company that no matter what, from that day forward, I was going to be working on my best idea. And so we ended the first year starting GreenPal with like 20 customers, and we were working 7 days a week and just not getting anywhere. And I kind of wanted to like give up, but then I thought, well, what else are you going to do? Because you already tried to retire, and while you've got enough money where you don't really need anymore. So you kind of need a project, need a mission. And so I made a decision that, from now on, no matter what, by default, I'm just going to work on my best idea. And that was how I got through the first 5 years, because it was really excruciating, just grinding out the business and celebrating very small wins. Like our first goal was to get 100 customers, and that took 2 years. And then, then we wanted to get 1,000. Then we wanted to get 10,000. And every one of these took like a year, 2 years each. And so just managing my psychology, and my co-founders the same way, managing our psychology through that, I guess like hardened me to now that it's doing well, and we get VCs hitting us up even through this downturn every day, and then M&A offers regularly, that it's like, well, I mean, what am I going to do if I do sell this company? I need a mission, and it still is like day one. This is a $99 billion industry. You wouldn't think it, but lawn care in the United States is damn near $100 billion, and we're just like a drop in the bucket. We're doing like around $30 million a year in sales. So we got a long way to go, and I think what I'm gonna do is do it till I'm not having fun anymore, because it's just now fun. It's the last 4 years have just gotten to be where it's fun, where I'm able to build a team. We're 47 people now, and I've got people that are smarter than me. Everybody that works for the company is smarter than me in some way in what they do. That's fun, and seeing it grow is fun. And so, get to 1 million users and 100 million in sales is the next goal. And somebody offered me $1 billion for it. I'd take it, but the offers we've gotten, which are sub $100 million, I don't know. It just seems like there's just a lot more territory to conquer, and there's a lot more fun to be had. Now, the minute I don't feel like that, or the minute I start sucking at this job, then that'll change it. And we may find out that, because there's 3 phases to every one of these companies. There's the startup, grow up, and then the scale up. And so the startup is like, we've got an idea, we've got a prototype, we've got 100 people using it. We don't really know if we have a business. And then there's the grow up. It's like, okay, we have a little something, and we're making money, and now we've got an actual business. Maybe we're doing $1 million a year in revenue. And then there's a scale up. It's like managers on managers, 100 plus employees. I'm pretty good at the first 2 phases. We're going to find out if I'm any good at the last phase, and we might find out that I suck at it. And so that may change how I see this. But for now, I'm having fun doing it.
It's interesting you bring up the word fun, because I've had several conversations with a lot of people recently, and it seems like that's a common theme that, hey, if I'm having fun, I don't necessarily need to look for either an exit or change of pace or whatever else. But the second I stop having fun, then it's time to move on or look for something different or figure out how to get back to having fun.
Yeah, it's a good position to earn your way to. And so I don't want people to hear that and say, well, I'm not having fun running this home cleaning service or this dry cleaning business or this bakery or this construction company. It sucks. I hate it. And so I think you can get to a position of where you're only going to do something if it's fun after you have a double or, a single or a double, or a win under your belt. So you've sold a company or you've built a little bit of a real estate portfolio and you don't have to work anymore. And so now you want to do what's fun with the rest of your life. Because, man, I'll tell you, the 15 years I spent running my first company sucked. It was not fun. It was organized chaos. It was putting out 100 fires every day. It was 7 days a week. It was stressful. There was nothing fun about that. And so I don't want people to misconstrue like what I'm saying as advice to only do things that are fun in business, because you won't get very far if when you're trying to go from 0 to 1.
For sure.
Shopify is the e-commerce platform revolutionizing millions of businesses worldwide. Whether you're a garage entrepreneur or IPO ready, Shopify is the only tool you need to start, run, and grow your business without the struggle. Shopify puts you in control of every sales channel. So whether you're selling satin sheets from Shopify's in-person POS system or offering organic olive oil on Shopify's all-in-one e-commerce platform, you are covered. And once you've reached your audience, Shopify has the internet's best converting checkout to help you turn them from browsers into buyers. What I love about Shopify is no matter how big you want to grow, Shopify gives you everything you need to take control of your business and take it to the next level. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/unveiled. That's all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/unveiled to take your business to the next level today. Shopify.com/unveiled. And thanks to Shopify for supporting today's episode.
So at this point, how do you think about putting money and reinvesting back into the business for growth versus, buying some more rental properties, for example, or putting some in personal residence or whatever you might want to do outside of the business?
Yeah, it's a great question. Because I've often waffled on this, over the years, because I've spent a decade building this business. And the best I can tell, the best decision over the past decade for ROI has been to put every dime I could back into building the tech business, because the tech multiples are just still far beyond any other multiples you're going to find. So while I don't have like a liquidity event to point to say, yeah, the ROI is there, I have faith and a belief, and just kind of marking to other comps of sales of companies like ours, and also M&A chatter, I can pretty well now tie back and say, yeah, every single dime I can afford to reinvest in the technology business is better off there than anywhere. And that's buying more real estate or investing in equities or anything else. The best ROI is investing in my own technology business. So that's what I've done over the last 10 years. I've done a little dab of real estate investing, but very little since I have started this company. So that's been my strategy. Was okay. The first phase, the first 15 years was building up the first portfolio, sell the blue collar business, reinvest that into real estate, lock all that down, kind of bank it. Now let's go after the technology business. Let's go after tech multiples, and reinvest everything, whether it's cash, foregoing salary. Like I didn't get paid a salary for the first 5 years, and reinvested all of that back in, and putting that all back into the technology business, and that's paid off. Now I can't like take that cash to the bank yet, but it will ultimately one day. And there's a strange thing going on in technology right now where they say something like 80% of all venture-backed companies out there right now can't clear their preference stack, which means the amount of money they've brought in and they're worth less than the capital they've brought in. And so I didn't want to get into that situation. So luckily, we didn't go down the path of raising venture capital. And so our cap table for the business has just got three line items on it, myself and my two co-founders. So that's a good place to kind of have grinded our way towards. And so that's the way I look at it. That's the way I'm going to keep looking at it, is just to keep. I pay myself a salary now, but it's probably half what the industry comps are for a CEO of the size of this company, or what I'd have to pay somebody to do my job, because I want to invest. I've got a data scientist that works for me and makes $1,000 an hour. Now, we can't afford her for really many hours, but I'd like to have somebody like that full time, and so reinvesting in those types of high leverage things is what I try to keep our cash for.
How long did it take for you to get profitable?
6 years.
Wow.
I mean, we were. I mean, it's not like we didn't really make any real money for 3 years, and then it took another 3 years on the top of that to have any kind of meaningful business. And then now, we're making money, but it took 6 years, and we were operating at a loss. I loaned the company a couple $100,000 to get started, and it took a while to pay that back. My co-founders put money in as well. We made a lot of mistakes in the early days too, because none of us knew how to code. None of us had ever built a software product before. So we had to learn. We had to do three things at once: work on the business, thinking through the strategy, thinking through the product, thinking through how we're going to acquire customers. Then we had to work in the business, making sure it ran properly, making sure when people signed up that they actually got service like they were supposed to. And then the third thing is we had to work on ourselves, reading every book we could get our hands on, taking every online course we could to learn how to code, taking every course we could to learn search engine optimization, things like that. So it was like three things at once for the 7 days a week for 3 years, and no salary. And it was probably 5 or 6 years.
As a tech entrepreneur, how many times, and you not knowing how to code, sounds like your partners weren't CTOs either.
Mm-mm.
Did you build all of your code overseas and just figure it out yourself, or did you hire a tech person to run the show? Like, how did you get through those first, I assume, iterations?
Yeah, so the first thing we did, we believed this would work. We thought, well, I kind of know what I want it to be because I've spent 15 years in the industry, and I kind of know how we want it to look and what features we want this thing to have. We'll just pay a dev shop in Nashville to build the product, and then we'll market it, and we'll just be off and going. And so we did that. We pulled together our money and spent like $150,000 with a development shop in Nashville. It took them 9 months and to build the product, and we got it released and realized really quick that wasn't going to work. It was buggy. It didn't have the features it needed. People, we were passing out flyers to get people to use it, and they hated it. And we learned real quick that was a foolish mistake. That trying to build a tech company with no engineering skills is like saying, I have an idea for a song, I just need to go hire a musician to compose it and sing it. Or it's like trying to start a 5-star restaurant and you've never cooked a meal before and you don't have a chef.
Yeah, my prior company was literally servicing all people who were non-tech founders who had already tried building the tech themselves. That was one of my companies. So literally, you would have been like honey to the or bee to the honey for me, because you had experienced the pain of trying to do it yourself, and then now you've got to reconfigure. But kudos to you for sticking with it, because a lot of people just like, okay, well, I just blew up all my money, and I'm not cut out for this, and leave. So, how did you retool from that expensive lesson?
Yeah, we had to retrench, and it was a real gut check. And that was kind of, like I mentioned earlier, that I had to take a deep breath, look at myself in the mirror, figure out where I wanted to be in life, what I wanted to do, and just decide that no matter what, I was just, from that moment, I was going to work on my best idea, and we were just going to do everything it took to get there. And ideally, you get what Paul Graham calls a hacker and a hustler. You get somebody who's just, a hustler who's just sales oriented, is good with customers and good at customer discovery. And then you get a hacker who maybe just wants to sit behind a laptop all the time and built several websites before or something, and the two of these people come together, and 1+1 is 3. Well, we had 3 hustlers, and so we just had 3 people who all wanted something more out of life, and we all had a chip on our shoulder in some way, and we just wanted to prove that we could build something big, and that was it. And what I learned going through that was, okay, well, I'm not an engineer, but that doesn't mean that I can't just become a crappy front end engineer just through taking online classes. And the same for my co-founder. He learned server side back end stuff, and we just decided that even though we didn't have these titles of designer or SEO or engineer, that we were just going to like learn how to do this stuff to be just dangerous enough to where we could get to the next level and then like start to make a little bit of money and then start to reallocate that capital towards building out a team around us. And as it turns out, that was the right way to do it. And looking back in 22 years of business, whether it was my blue collar business or now my tech company, virtually every single time I've tried to outsource something that I had never done before or delegate something that I didn't have acumen in, it's always blowing up in my face. Pretty much every single time. And when you try to delegate something, you want to delegate from a stewardship standpoint, not one of abjuration. So you don't want to say, okay, like, I don't know how to do this, you go handle it. That's always going to blow up in your face. You want it to be like, okay, here's the scope of work for what we need done. Here's how we do it here. Here's why we do it this way. Here's the level of quality we expect. Here's how long we think it should take. Here's the different tactics and languages and things we want you to use and do. And here's our system that you're going to plug into. And now this is when we expect to have it back. You go handle it. That's how you delegate. And so I kind of had to do it wrong first, and then learn how to do it right. But the problem is I overcorrected on the other end of the pendulum. It swung too far to the other side. Because then, like here, we've pissed away all of our money on outsourcing and delegating when we didn't know what we were doing, and now we don't have any cash, and so we held on to it too long after that, and then in turn delegate the right way. We could have framed up a good team around us 2 years in, and we didn't until 3 or 4 years in. So the PTSD from that took a while to work through that cognitive overhead.
It makes for a good story.
Well, it still feels like day one, but yeah, that was a chapter of it that was rough.
Yeah.
So Bryan, at this point, where do you go from here with your life, your investments, the business? And one thing I want to go back to that I think we covered, and for our listeners that may be tuning in later, the original episode was 193 back in 2020. Or 2021, sorry. July of 2021. So do you have a paid for house, or do you have debt on the house, on your primary residence?
I have zero debt anywhere. So this Dave Ramsey Kool-Aid, I'm still hooked up to it. And
he's in your backyard, right? So
yeah. He's worth I think he's pretty much officially a billionaire.
He is.
Isn't that crazy?
He is.
When I was listening to him 20 years ago, he was in the 8 figures range. He hadn't even hit 9 at that point. And now this dude's a billionaire. That's insane to me.
My grandfather used to say,
debt-free business.
The easiest way to become a billionaire is to be a preacher or a financial advisor.
So. There's some truth to that. He's a little bit of both.
So you're still on the Dave Ramsey kick, debt-free on everything, and always have been essentially after you exited the first business, correct?
Yeah, that's right. I drive a 2006 Chevy Tahoe. So I drive that's an 18-year-old car. So I still drive old stuff. My home's paid for. I have no debt. And now here's the thing. I'm sure if I did some smarter stuff and leverage some things, my net worth would be 2 or 3x what it is today, especially over the last 10 years. But man, I've never lost a night's sleep. And so there's something to be said for that, especially, with the roller coaster that we're kind of going through now, and who knows what the next couple of years is going to bring us. I've missed out on a lot of gains, but I've also had a lot of peace of mind.
Yeah, for sure. There's value in that, right?
There is.
It's hard to place the value on that, but man, that's crazy. So lifestyle inflation, even as your net worth has grown and even the success of your new venture, you haven't really partaken in any of that. Is that correct?
Well, not necessarily. So I've kind of been there, done that. With my first company. So just to kind of rewind, like when I was mowing yards, in outside of Nashville, Tennessee, in like the best neighborhoods. Was where my clientele lived. The doctors in town, the lawyers in town, the business owners in town. And I thought, man, if I could just, because I was really conflicted. I didn't want to like spend my life in the landscaping business because I thought it was kind of like I was perceiving myself that I would be a loser if I did that. And I thought, well, if I could just live in this neighborhood by 30, then it'll be worth it. And so that was a goal that, it was like the best neighborhood in town, $2 million houses and up, and outside of in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, outside of Nashville. Those are nice houses. $2 million doesn't buy you anything out west or in the Northeast, but in Tennessee it does. And so that was my goal, was like, if I could just live in this same neighborhood as my customers, then I will have made it, in my head. And if I could do that, then life will be good. So I set out a plan to do that, and I did it by 29. So here I am, 29 years old. I'm living in the best neighborhood in town, and I went ahead and bought a Ferrari. So I had a Ferrari in the garage, best neighborhood in town, outdoor pool house. Neighbors hated me because I threw parties all the time, and like they're like trying to live like they're in their 50s, and here I am, 29, and they couldn't believe a landscaper was their neighbor, and so the whole thing was just weird. But I did that for like 2 years and learned a lot about myself. That man, it was a big pain in the butt. Like having a big house, like it was like 7,000 square feet, it was just a pain. It was just me. And it was just a headache, and like the car was a headache. And as it turns out, I don't like driving that kind of car because then everybody wants to talk to you everywhere you go, and I don't really feel like having a conversation with a stranger at the gas station every time I go to get gas. So I like literally in 18 months or 24 months, I sold all that and got rid of all of it.
You were a self-made. You were living the life of a self-made Billy Madison.
Exactly. I mean, it was bizarre and stupid with zeros on the end of it, and so I guess I learned those lessons. I learned about myself that I don't like all that stuff. I don't need all that stuff. So now I live very simply. I live in a very small condo, and I love to travel. I love experiences, and so that's really what I spend my money on now is traveling the world, seeing as much of the world as I can, and not doing anything I don't want to do. That's really important to me. I only answer the phone for a handful of family members and friends. And, whereas back when I was running my first company and starting my second one, I would have to take 100 phone calls a day. And so I kind of have PTSD about having to take phone call after back to back to back. So I don't want to do that anymore. Those are the things I place value in. And so now it's like, just being able to build things that people get value from and make money while doing it is my idea of success and happiness now. And it's not tied to material things because I've kind of been there, done that, made those mistakes. And everybody tells you that. Everybody tells you like, oh, once you're not going to be happy once you have those things. You have to still get those things. You're not able to you're not able to learn that without experiencing it yourself.
Great perspective to share with our listeners. So let's wrap up with a couple of rapid fire questions. And I'm not going to do all the normal ones just because we've done a bunch with you and you just shared a bunch of kind of insight to some of those. But one thing I do want to ask off the bat here is, what's a key lesson that you learned from childhood?
Yeah. Well, let's see. From childhood, I think I was able to develop the chip on my shoulder that got me through the first, maybe metaphorical 5 levels of business. Because I wasn't like the cool kid in high school. I wasn't picked for the varsity soccer team, and I didn't have a date to prom, and all of these things that I went through as a kid were kind of foundational in putting this chip on my shoulder to get me to where I had this desire to build a successful business. Now, once you get through like the first 2 or 3 levels of the game, then you realize that the business is not about you. It's about the people that work for you, and it's about the family that you have built around you in the business, and it's about your customers and stakeholders. It's no longer about you. But you kind of need that chip on your shoulder to get through the early days. And I look for this with people that I hire to join our mission now. I look for people that have that kind of chip on their shoulders. So I don't know if I learned that or developed that when I was young in high school, but that was one thing I learned. The other thing I learned was that you have to develop something, like you have to build once and sell twice. And I learned that at a young age, that I wasn't going to make any money just me mowing yards all day. And in fact, I had customers who were dentists, who were lawyers, and I was always baffled, like they could only sell their hours one time. And even as a young kid at 18, 19, 20, I understood that then, and that carried me through to where I am today. It was like build once, sell twice. And so even as a kid, I was like trying to figure out how to get multiple crews going of what I was doing to where I could like multiply and duplicate this stuff. So those are things that I learned then that are still true today.
Nice. What's the most fun that you've had with money?
Let's see. I'll tell you the most fun that I've had with money. And I've done a lot of stupid things with money. And I by no means have achieved huge amounts of wealth. I guess you could say like I'm middle class fancy. And I heard Grant Cardone say the other day that if you're being a single digit millionaire is the new middle class. Grant Cardone said that the other day, and that kind of hurt. But the funnest thing I've ever done with money, I was in Bogota, Colombia, and I heard through the grapevine that there was this guy who was a fellow gang leader who would walk you through, protected through some of the neighborhoods in the hills there. And so I don't know if you've ever been in South America or seen like pictures where it's like a hillside and it's just tons of like shanty shacks and just different little houses that look like they're all about to fall down. And I've always like wondered like what's down in there, like how these people live down in there. And so I wanted to go see that, and I wanted to go walk through that. And so I paid this guy like $100, and he escorted me through this barrio. And it's basically like a really poor, dangerous neighborhood where people live. And he's telling me that if we go around this corner, we're both going to be killed because his cousin killed the leader of that neighborhood, and that this neighborhood has boundaries to it, and we can only go so far. But I'm safe with him because he's kind of like the overlord of this neighborhood. So felt kind of safe. And so I'm walking through these kind of little shacks and shanties and seeing, like people living with live chickens, and there is no suitable structures. It's all this kind of stuff cobbled together and tin roofs and whatnot. And I see this guy who's working on his little shack, and I'm looking at it, and I used to do quite a bit of construction. I'm looking at it, he's actually doing a pretty good job building it. And I'm like, he's got a pretty good foundation here, and I can see where he's roughing in the piping and stuff. And I looked, I was like, so you're doing a pretty good job building this. I said, how long until it's going to be done? And he goes, maybe 2 more years. I'm like, 2 years? At this rate, what you're doing, you could get this done in 3 months. He goes, well, it's the money. I don't have the money to finish it, so I work a little bit and just kind of build it as I go. I said, well, how much money is it going to take you to finish this thing? He said, he told me something in pesos, and I put it in my phone. And it was $800. I was like, so $800 is going to finish your whole house? And he goes, yeah. And I thought, I said, well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to give you $100 today. And if you can WhatsApp me progress pictures, I will send you $100 a week until you get this house finished. He's like, you do that? And I said, yeah. And so sure enough, gave him $100 that day. And 2 weeks goes by. I didn't think anything of it. I get like a flood of pictures in my inbox where now he's got like some studs, and he's like, okay, now my next plan is I need to wire this up. And he's giving me but I need another $100. So I sent him another $100. So long story short, over the course of like 3 months, we built the house. And sure enough, he got it done. And that was a lot of fun for very, very, very little amount of money. Probably the funnest thing I've ever done with money.
That's cool. That's a cool story. What has been the craziest thing you've ever done to earn money? So not necessarily crazy, but something I don't ever want to have to do again was when I was trying to break into the commercial market in my first business. Anybody that's tried to
run a service-based business knows that going from a residential client base to a commercial client base is kind of hard because they're almost two different businesses. Commercial landscaping and residential landscaping are two different businesses, and you kind of have to learn how they speak and how the processes work and how they do RFPs for pricing and stuff. But I had a client I was mowing yards for who owned like 3 McDonald's. He was a McDonald's franchiser. And every year I would beg him, like, let me bid on the contract for those 3 restaurants. He's like, nah, we got somebody corporate puts us through. And I thought, well, what can I do to earn your business? Just think, I'll be cheaper than this guy, whatever. And it hit me one day that I was at one of his stores and I was ordering like, an extra value meal. And I looked down and in the drive-through, the whole drive-through area is covered with cigarette butts. And I'm like, this is disgusting. like nobody cleans this up. And so I was working that day. So I got my 2 helpers and we took a 5-gallon bucket and we picked up all the cigarette butts. So I took before and after pictures with my crappy digital camera and printed them off and gave it to him. I said, look, we will clean up the cigarette butts every time we come to mow the yard at your store for free every time. If you'll do that, I'll give you the contract. So sure enough, we did. And I guess careful what you ask for, because then every time we went to go service his property, I had to get on my hands and knees and pick up cigarette butts and put them in a 5-gallon bucket. And he loved it. And he gave me the other 2 stores. And then we did that for them. And then he took me to the regional kind of meeting and the next year, and they let me pitch something like 20 other operators. And I picked up another 10 stores doing that. And then little by little, at the time of selling that business, we maintained something like 120 different McDonald's locations, still picking up the cigarette butts every week. So that was something that I did then, and it was nasty, and I hope I never have to do that again. And that was one reason why I bought a bunch of real estate selling that business, because I never wanted to go pick up cigarette butts again.
That's an awesome story.
That's awesome.
I love it.
Well, Bryan, what would be your last piece of advice to somebody who's just getting started on their journey?
What I would say is, if you're just getting started, the least sexy your business, probably the greater your chances of success. And so for me, it was the lawn mowing business. If you can think of simple businesses like that and then just work really hard in them for a period of time and turn low quality revenue into high quality revenue. And what I mean by that is take the money you're making out of that entry level business and put it into more durable sources of revenue like real estate. It's just a no-brainer, simple way to build 7 and 8-figure wealth that anybody can do if they're willing to work hard enough in this country, and maybe even more as I see a lot of service-based businesses. It's just really hard to get a home cleaner. It's really hard to get a plumber, an electrician. These simple, traditional types of blue-collar service-based businesses are now in more high demand, and these businesses have higher margins than they've ever had. So if you can think of it that way, where it's okay, I'm going to put 5 or 10 years into a blue-collar type of business, get on first base, and then I'm going to swing for the fences for my second or third thing. Because a lot of people don't want to do that. They want to bypass all that, and they want to go for the glory, right off the starting block. And that's just not the way it works. It's going to take 5 or 10 years to build a foundation.
For sure.
But get started.
Awesome.
Get started today.
Awesome. That's Bryan with a net worth of over $5 million. Thanks for coming on the show today.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on. I enjoyed it. It was fun.
Thanks for listening to the Millionaires Unveiled podcast with Jace Mattinson. For more stories, investment opportunities, and information, check out our website, millionairesunveiled.com. See you next time when you'll hear from another everyday millionaire.